These are my thoughts on King Kong versus Godzilla and Godzilla versus Mothra. And the reason for combining them is because they both feature the same villain, which is capitalism. So, to explain that, in King Kong versus Godzilla, the main driving force of the story is this PR executive who's working for a company called Pacific Pharmaceuticals. And he comes up with the idea that let's kidnap King Kong from the island that he's living on and let's bring him to Japan and we can use him as a publicity stunt to promote our company. And in Mothra vs. Godzilla, the movie starts off with this storm which washes this giant egg ashore on one of the Japanese islands. And then like this businessman shows up and he buys the egg from the fisherman. And him and another businessman come up with this idea that we're going to use this egg as a central attraction and we're going to build like an amusement park around it so then people can come and watch it and we can make a lot of money off it. So in that sense they both kind of follow like a very similar track. The other similarity is also that both films feature a tribe that worships their respective kaijus. Now, the one minor difference is that the PR executive from King Kong vs. Godzilla is he's portrayed as a little bit goofy and a little more comedic. So he doesn't come off as being like purely evil, which he is, but like he has no problems in kidnapping Kong or trying to blow him up with dynamite. But because he is portrayed as a little bit goofy, you kind of don't want him to die. So that's, I guess that's like a minor positive, especially with that character. Because at the end of the day, all Kong wants to do in the movie is like drink berry juice and then fall asleep to tribal music. But the two businessmen in Mothra vs. Godzilla are just like purely evil. So after they buy the egg, they refuse to pay the fisherman. And then the two businessmen also get into a fight over profits. And then you have these two tiny women that are supposed to be like Mothra's representatives. If you've seen any Godzilla movies, then like the Japanese Godzilla movies, then you know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, if you're wondering like why there are two tiny women, when I say tiny, they're like that big. Okay, so if you're wondering like why there are two tiny women, you don't ask those questions. It's a Godzilla movie. Anyway, so these two tiny women show up, and they come to the businessmen and they're like, can you give us the egg back? And the first thought that goes through their minds is, what? Let's capture them, and we can use them as like an additional attraction in our amusement park. So they're just like properly evil. Like they'll do anything for money. So when towards the end of the movie they get their comeuppance, you're actually like pretty happy with what happens to them. The other major similarity between both the films is the ending, or like the lack thereof. Uh, because like with the previous Godzilla movies, like these are like movie number 3 and 4. Okay, like Godzilla, which is like the first one, and then the second one is called Godzilla Raids Again. Both those films have like a proper ending. Like in the first one, they use like the oxygen destroyer to kill Godzilla, and in the second one, they bury him in an avalanche. With both these films, it sort of just feels like the director, ran out of footage, or felt like, hey man, we've reached 90 minutes, so we have to end the movie. So at this point, Godzilla is going to fall into the ocean and not come out. And then everyone standing around just goes like, oh, I guess he's not coming out. And we should all just go home now. And the end. So yeah, so you kind of just feel like maybe you could have done a better ending. There are Godzilla movies which have done much better endings, but yeah, not these two. That's probably my biggest issue with both these films. Now, as far as like on a technical note, Mothra versus Godzilla is much better looking than King Kong versus Godzilla, especially like when it comes to VFX and miniature work. It is much better. Like even though the team is the same, like it's Ishiro Honda directing and Eiji Tsuburaya who does all the VFX work, but in Mothra versus Godzilla they do like a much better job. Also, there's a shot in the movie where you have like this whole bunch of people seeing Godzilla approach, and he's like behind like this oil refinery or something, or some kind of a factory. Then it cuts to Godzilla and you get like a miniature of the same factory. Like all of that stuff is done really well. So yeah, like from a technical standpoint, I think Mothra versus Godzilla does a much better job. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on King Kong versus Godzilla and Mothra versus Godzilla. Like I'm trying to go through, like right now the plan is to watch like all the 15 or 16 Godzilla movies that were made from like 1950 to 1970. So I'm up to number 4 now. And number 5 is supposed to be Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. But before that, the next review will be for a French film from the 60s called That Man from Rio. So stay tuned for that.